The auction block stood empty in the scorching heat of Mineral Park, Arizona, waiting for her like a vulture circling its prey. And Lily Norton knew that by sunset, she would belong to a stranger. Her stepmother's shrill voice echoed through the dusty Main Street as she dragged Lily by the arm, her bony fingers digging into flesh like talons. "You should be grateful anyone would pay for a worthless girl like you," Margaret Norton hissed, her face twisted with a hatred that had only grown since Lily's father died 6 months ago from pneumonia. The August heat of 1882 beat down mercilessly on the small mining town, but the cold terror in Lily's chest felt worse than any desert sun. At 19 years old, Lily had spent the last half-year enduring her stepmother's increasingly violent tirades and sudden mood shifts. Margaret wanted her gone, wanted her out of the house her father had built, wanted to erase every reminder of the man who had loved his daughter more than his second wife. Lily had hoped that blood ties and common decency would prevent something this terrible. But hope was a fragile thing in the Arizona territory, especially for a young woman with no family left to protect her. The auction platform had been erected in front of the general store, a makeshift wooden structure that usually held cattle or mining equipment for sale. Today, it would hold something far more precious and far more desperate. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs as Margaret shoved her toward the steps. A small crowd had already gathered, mostly rough-looking miners and drifters who eyed her with expressions that made her skin crawl. She wore her best dress, a faded blue calico that had belonged to her mother, though Margaret had insisted she wear it only to fetch a higher price. "Ladies and gentlemen," called out Edmund Hayes, the town's auctioneer and saloon keeper, a man whose morals were as flexible as his loyalties. "We have here Miss Lily Norton, 19 years of age, healthy, can cook and clean, and comes with the full legal transfer of responsibility from her guardian." Lily felt bile rise in her throat. This could not be happening. This could not be real. Yet the sun continued to blaze overhead, and the crowd continued to murmur with interest, and Margaret stood off to the side with her arms crossed and a satisfied smile on her thin lips. "Shall we start the bidding at $50? Hayes continued, his voice carrying across the dusty street. A grizzled miner near the front raised his hand, and Lily's stomach dropped. She had seen that man before, seen him drunk and violent outside the saloons, seen him treat his mule with more kindness than he showed to people. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give Margaret the satisfaction. $50 to Jake Morrison, Hayes announced. "Do I hear 60? Another hand went up, belonging to a ranch hand she did not recognize. Then another bid from a man who ran the brothel 2 towns over, and Lily felt her last shred of hope begin to crumble. She closed her eyes and prayed to a God she was not sure was listening anymore, prayed for deliverance or at least for mercy in whatever fate awaited her. $100. The voice cut through the murmuring crowd like a knife through butter, deep and steady and utterly confident. Lily's eyes snapped open, and she found herself staring at a man she had never seen before in Mineral Park. He stood at the back of the crowd, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly beneath his worn hat. His face was sun-bronzed and angular, with a strong jaw and eyes that, even from a distance, seemed to hold something different from the other men present. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, dusty denim pants, a simple cotton shirt, leather vest, and boots that had seen plenty of miles. $100 to the gentleman in the back, Hayes said, his eyebrows raised with surprise. That's quite a jump. Anyone want a counter? The crowd fell silent. $100 was more money than most of these men saw in 3 months of hard labor. Jake Morrison spat into the dust and shook his head, backing away from the platform. The brothel owner looked like he might counter but seemed to think better of it after sizing up the stranger. "Going once," Hayes called. "Going twice." He paused, scanning the crowd for any last-minute bids. "Sold to the stranger for $100. Lily's knees nearly buckled with relief that at least she would not belong to Jake Morrison, but fear quickly replaced it. Who was this man? Why had he paid so much? What did he want with her? She watched as he made his way through the parting crowd, moving with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his own skin. As he climbed the steps to the platform, she got her first clear look at his face. He was younger than she had initially thought, probably no more than 25, with eyes the color of aged whiskey that met hers directly. There was something in his expression she could not quite name, something that was not the predatory hunger she had seen in the other bidders. He pulled a leather pouch from his vest and counted out the money into Hayes's waiting palm without breaking eye contact with her. "She's all yours, mister." Hayes trailed off expectantly. "Killian," the stranger said quietly. "Wade Killian." "Well then, Mr. Killian, Miss Norton here is your legal responsibility now. The paperwork just needs your signature." Wade nodded and finally broke eye contact with Lily to scrawl his name across the document Hayes produced. Margaret swept forward to snatch the money from Hayes before anyone could reconsider, not even sparing Lily a final glance before disappearing into the dispersing crowd. Lily felt the last thread connecting her to her old life snap like a dried twig. "Can you ride?" Wade asked her, his voice surprisingly gentle. Lily found her voice, though it came out smaller than she would have liked. "Yes, sir." "Then let us get out of this town." He descended the steps and held out his hand to help her down. Lily hesitated for only a moment before taking it, feeling the rough calluses of hard work beneath her fingers. His grip was firm but careful, as though he was acutely aware that she might startle like a wild horse. He led her to where two horses stood tethered outside the general store. One was a large bay gelding that she assumed was his, and the other was a smaller chestnut mare with a kind eye. He untied both horses and handed her the mare's reins. "What's her name?" Lily asked, running her hand along the mare's neck more for her own comfort than the horse's. "Haven't named her yet. Just bought her this morning." Wade swung up into his saddle with practiced ease and looked down at her expectantly. Lily mounted the chestnut, grateful that her father had taught her to ride astride despite Margaret's protests that it was unladylike. As they began to ride out of Mineral Park, she could feel eyes watching them from windows and doorways, could feel the weight of what had just happened settling onto her shoulders like a physical burden. They rode in silence for the first hour, leaving the mining town behind and heading northeast across the desert landscape, dotted with sagebrush and ocotillo. The afternoon sun continued its merciless assault, and Lily was grateful when Wade finally slowed his pace and pulled a canteen from his saddle, offering it to her first before taking a drink himself. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer. "My ranch." "About 3 hours from here near Kingman." He capped the canteen and hooked it back on his saddle. "It's not much, just me and a couple of ranch hands, but it's honest work and good land." "Why did you buy me?" The question burst out before she could stop it, raw and desperate. Wade was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the horizon. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured and careful. "I was in town to sell some horses when I heard what was happening. My sister." He paused and Lily saw his jaw tighten. "My sister was in a similar situation once, back in Texas. Different circumstances, but the same desperation. A good man helped her when no one else would. I figured it was time I paid that kindness forward." "What happened to your sister?" She married that good man who helped her. They have a farm in Texas now, 3 kids, happy as can be." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "She writes me letters telling me I need to settle down too, but ranching does not leave much time for courting." Lily felt something in her chest unclench slightly. "So you do not expect—" She could not finish the sentence, but Wade seemed to understand. "I expect you to work like everyone else on the ranch earns their keep," he said firmly. "You will have your own room in the house, your own space. What happened today was legal in the eyes of the law, but it was not right, and I will not compound that wrong by treating you as property. You are free to leave whenever you want, though I would appreciate if you stayed long enough to at least give ranching a try." "I have nowhere else to go," Lily admitted quietly. "Then I guess we have that in common," Wade said. "I came out here 5 years ago with nothing but a horse and a dream. Built that ranch from the ground up, one fence post at a time. It is hard work, but it's mine, and no one can take that away from me." They continued riding as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Lily found herself studying Wade when she thought he was not looking, trying to understand this stranger who had just changed the entire course of her life. He sat his horse like he had been born in the saddle, moving with the animal's rhythm rather than fighting against it. There was a quietness to him that felt different from the loud, boastful men she had known in Mineral Park, a sense of someone who thought before he spoke and acted with purpose, rather than impulse. As the light faded, they crested a rise, and Lily saw Wade's ranch spread out in the valley below. It was modest, as he had said, but she could see the care that had gone into it. A sturdy wooden house with a covered porch, a barn that looked well-maintained, corrals with strong fencing, and a windmill turning lazily in the evening breeze. A thin trail of smoke rose from what she assumed was the bunkhouse where the ranch hands stayed. "It is not a palace," Wade said, following her gaze, "but the roof does not leak, and the well never runs dry." "It's beautiful," Lily said honestly, and she meant it. After months of living in her stepmother's house of hatred and fear, even a simple ranch house looked like paradise. They rode down into the valley as the last light faded from the sky. 2 men emerged from the bunkhouse as they approached, both looking curious about the woman Wade had brought home. Wade dismounted and helped Lily down, her legs stiff from the long ride. "Charlie, Tom, this is Miss Lily Norton." Wade introduced her to the 2 ranch hands. Charlie was older, probably in his 50s, with graying hair and a weathered face that spoke of decades under the sun. Tom was younger, maybe early 30s, with red hair and a friendly smile. "She will be staying with us and helping around the ranch. I expect you both to treat her with respect." "Yes, boss," they said in unison, both tipping their hats to Lily. "Tom, can you take care of the horses?" "Charlie, I trust you saved us some supper." "Always do, boss," Charlie said with a grin. "Got a pot of stew still warm on the stove." Wade led Lily toward the house, and she felt every eye on her back as they climbed the porch steps. Inside, the house was simple but clean, with sturdy furniture and a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with doors leading off to what she assumed were bedrooms. "You will take the room on the right," Wade said, lighting a lamp and gesturing toward one of the doors. "It was meant to be a guest room, but I have never had guests, so you can make it your own. There are some blankets in the chest, and I will bring you water for washing in the morning." Lily stepped into the small room and felt tears threaten again, but this time they were different. The room had a real bed with a mattress, a small dresser, a wooden chair, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. It was more than she had dared hope for. "Thank you," she whispered, turning to face Wade. "I do not know how I will ever repay you for what you did today." "Like I said, you will work for your keep," Wade replied, but his tone was kind. "Now come eat something. You look like you have not had a proper meal in weeks." He was not wrong. Margaret had been feeding her table scraps for months, claiming that Lily did not deserve to eat the same food as her. At the kitchen table, Wade ladled generous portions of stew into 2 bowls and cut thick slices of bread to go with it. They ate in comfortable silence, and Lily felt warmth spread through her body for the first time since her father's death, not just from the food but from the simple act of being treated like a human being worthy of basic kindness. After supper, Wade showed her where everything was in the house, from the water pump outside to the wash basin to the pantry where they kept the food supplies. He moved through the space with the efficiency of someone who had been taking care of himself for a long time, and Lily found herself wondering about his life before the ranch, about the sister he had mentioned, about what had brought him to Arizona territory. "I rise at dawn," Wade told her as he prepared to leave her for the night. "You can sleep as late as you need tomorrow. Take time to rest and settle in. Charlie usually makes breakfast for everyone, but after that, if you want to help with the cooking and the house, I would appreciate it. Tom and Charlie are good men, but they are terrible at keeping things organized." "I can do that," Lily said quickly, eager to prove her worth. "I can cook and clean and mend clothes. I can help in the garden if you have one, and I know how to preserve food for winter." Wade smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his entire face. "Then I think we will get along just fine, Miss Norton. Please, just Lily." "Lily," he repeated, and she liked the way her name sounded in his deep voice. "Good night, then. If you need anything, my room is just across the hall." After he left, Lily closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to process everything that had happened. This morning she had woken in her stepmother's house, not knowing what fresh torment the day would bring. By noon she had been standing on an auction block, sold like livestock to the highest bidder. And now she was here, in a small ranch house with a cowboy who had saved her without expecting anything in return. She changed into the one nightgown she had been allowed to bring, washed her face in the basin of water Wade had left for her, and climbed into the bed. The mattress was firm but comfortable, and the blankets smelled like sage and sunshine. Through the window, she could see stars scattered across the black sky like diamonds, more stars than she had ever seen from town. For the first time in 6 months, Lily felt safe. She was not naive enough to think that all her problems were solved, not foolish enough to believe that life on a ranch would be easy. But as she drifted off to sleep, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, her life could become something worth living again. The rooster's crow woke her before dawn, and Lily dressed quickly in her work dress, braiding her long brown hair and splashing cold water on her face to chase away the last remnants of sleep. She could hear movement in the kitchen and emerged to find Wade already dressed and Charlie standing at the stove flipping flapjacks. "Morning, miss," Charlie greeted her cheerfully. "Hope you slept well. Coffee's ready if you want some." "Good morning," Lily replied, suddenly shy in the presence of these men who were essentially strangers. But she poured herself a cup of coffee and sat at the table, watching as Charlie piled flapjacks onto plates and Wade set out butter and molasses. Tom arrived a few minutes later, and the 4 of them ate breakfast together as the sky outside slowly lightened from black to deep blue to pale pink. The men discussed the day's work, something about checking fences in the north pasture and bringing in a few horses that needed shoeing. Lily listened quietly, learning the rhythm of ranch life through their casual conversation. After breakfast, the men headed out to start their work, and Lily set about cleaning up the kitchen. She washed the dishes, swept the floor, and took stock of the pantry to plan what she might cook for supper. The house needed a woman's touch. She could see that immediately. Dust had accumulated in corners, curtains needed washing, and the floors could use a good scrubbing. But she would not do it all in one day. She would prove her worth gradually, show Wade that his investment in her had not been wasted. By mid-morning, she had the house looking considerably better and had bread dough rising near the warm stove. She ventured outside to explore the immediate area around the house, finding a small vegetable garden that had been somewhat neglected but still produced tomatoes, squash, and beans. She spent an hour weeding and watering, enjoying the feel of dirt under her fingernails and the sun on her back. She was carrying a basket of vegetables back to the house when she saw Wade riding in from the north pasture. He dismounted near the barn and led his horse inside, but emerged a few minutes later and walked toward the house. Lily felt her heart rate increase slightly, though she could not say why. "How are you settling in?" he asked as he approached, removing his hat and wiping sweat from his brow with his sleeve. "Very well, thank you. I have been cleaning the house and working in the garden. I hope that is all right." "More than all right," Wade said, glancing toward the garden with appreciation. "I have not had time to tend to that properly in weeks. The vegetables are usually half eaten by rabbits before I can harvest them." "I can build some better fencing around it if you have spare wood," Lily offered. Wade looked at her with surprise. "You know how to build fencing? My father taught me. He said a person should know how to fix things, whether they are a man or a woman." The memory of her father brought a pang of grief, but it was softer now, less sharp than it had been. "Your father sounds like he was a wise man." "He was. He married my mother when I was 2 years old and adopted me as his own, raised me like I was his blood daughter. When she died of cholera 7 years ago, he married Margaret thinking I needed a mother's influence." Lily's voice turned bitter. "That was a mistake. Family can be complicated," Wade said carefully, "but the family we choose is often stronger than the family we are born into." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, and Lily found herself studying his face in the bright morning light. He had the kind of face that looked better the longer you looked at it. Not classically handsome, but strong and honest and real. There were small scars here and there, evidence of a life lived fully, and his eyes held a depth that suggested he had seen both the best and worst of what the world had to offer. "I should get back to work," Wade said finally. "But tonight, after supper, maybe you can tell me more about what you know how to do. I might have more work for you if you are willing." "I am very willing," Lily assured him. As the days turned into weeks, Lily fell into the rhythm of ranch life more easily than she had imagined possible. She woke early to help Charlie with breakfast, then spent her mornings tending the house and garden. In the afternoons, she often helped with other ranch tasks, from mending tack to helping move cattle to even assisting with breaking some of the gentler horses. Wade had been surprised by her skill with animals, but Lily explained that her father had worked in the stables in Mineral Park before his death, and she had spent countless hours learning from him. What surprised her most was how much she enjoyed the work. It was hard and exhausting, and some nights she fell into bed so tired she could barely move, but it was honest work that produced tangible results. More than that, she felt useful for the first time in months, felt valued as part of a team rather than merely tolerated or worse. Wade proved to be a fair and patient employer. He never raised his voice, never criticized harshly, but instead offered gentle corrections when needed and praise when earned. She caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she was not looking, and she wondered what thoughts passed through his mind during those moments. For her part, Lily found herself watching him too. She noticed the way he was always the first one working and the last one to stop, the way he treated his animals with kindness and his men with respect. She noticed how he sometimes played harmonica on the porch in the evenings, soft melodies that drifted through the open windows like a lullaby. She noticed the laugh lines around his eyes that appeared when Charlie told one of his terrible jokes, and the way he always made sure everyone else ate before he filled his own plate. One evening, about 6 weeks after she had arrived at the ranch, Lily was preparing supper when Wade came in from the barn looking troubled. He sat at the table with a heavy sigh and ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Is something wrong?" Lily asked, setting down the knife she had been using to chop vegetables. "Just ranch troubles," Wade said, but when he looked up and saw her concerned expression, he elaborated. "I need to move about 50 head of cattle to market in Prescott next week, but Tom just told me his mother in Texas is dying, and he needs to leave immediately. I do not blame him, family comes first, but that leaves me short-handed for the drive. Could you hire someone temporarily?" Lily suggested. "Maybe, but finding someone trustworthy this late is difficult. Most of the good hands are already employed this time of year." He rubbed his temples like a headache was forming. "What if I went with you?" The words were out of Lily's mouth before she had fully thought them through, but once said, she did not want to take them back. Wade looked at her with surprise. "Lily, a cattle drive is not easy work. We would be on the trail for at least a week, sleeping on the ground, dealing with difficult terrain and possibly difficult people. I know how to ride. I know how to rope, and I am stronger than I look," Lily said firmly. "You have taught me so much these past weeks. Let me help you." Wade studied her for a long moment, and Lily met his gaze steadily, refusing to back down. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right. But if it gets too difficult, you have to promise me you will say something. I do not want you getting hurt trying to prove a point." "I promise," Lily said, feeling a surge of excitement mixed with nervousness. They spent the next few days preparing for the drive. Charlie would stay behind to watch the ranch while Wade, Lily, and a young ranch hand named Jesse that Wade managed to hire at the last minute would make the trek to Prescott. Lily packed supplies, checked and rechecked the gear, and practiced her roping skills every spare moment she had. The morning they left, the sun was just breaking over the eastern mountains, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. Lily wore practical men's trousers that Wade had found for her, along with a shirt, vest, and a wide-brimmed hat to keep the sun off her face. She felt both nervous and exhilarated as they began moving the cattle north. The work was even harder than Wade had warned. The cattle were stubborn and prone to wandering off, requiring constant vigilance to keep them moving in the right direction. The days were scorching hot, and the nights were surprisingly cold once the sun went down. They ate simple meals cooked over a campfire and slept on bedrolls under the stars, with one person always taking watch to make sure the cattle did not scatter or get attacked by predators. But despite the hardship, Lily found herself loving every minute of it. There was something deeply satisfying about this kind of work, about pushing herself to her limits and discovering she was capable of more than she had known. She and Wade worked side by side, falling into an easy partnership that required few words but much trust. He showed her how to read the cattle's behavior, how to anticipate problems before they happened, how to stay calm when things went wrong. On the third night, they made camp near a small creek, and after supper, Jesse took the first watch while Wade and Lily sat by the fire. The flames danced and crackled, casting flickering shadows across Wade's face as he carved a small piece of wood with his pocket knife, an idle habit she had noticed he had when deep in thought. "You were right," Wade said suddenly. not looking up from his carving. "You are stronger than you look." Lily felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. "Thank you. I have been trying my best." "You have been doing more than your best. You have been doing the work of any experienced ranch hand." He finally looked up at her, and in the firelight, his eyes seemed to hold an intensity that made her breath catch. "I am glad you came to the ranch, Lily. I know the circumstances were terrible, but I am glad it brought you to us. Brought you to me." The confession hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest. Lily felt her heart hammering in her chest as she met his gaze. "I am glad, too," she whispered. "These past weeks have been the happiest I have been since my father died. You made me feel wanted again, Wade. You made me feel like I matter." "You do matter," Wade said fiercely, setting down his carving and shifting closer to her. "You matter more than you know." They sat there, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could see the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. The night sounds of the desert surrounded them, crickets chirping, the cattle lowing softly in the distance, the creek babbling over stones. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility and promise. "Can I kiss you?" Wade asked, his voice rough with emotion. Lily's answer was to close the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home. His arms came around her, strong and secure, and she melted into his embrace as the kiss deepened. There was nothing rushed or desperate about it, just a slow exploration, a claiming, a promise of something more. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since the day I bought your freedom," he admitted. "But I did not want you to think I expected anything from you. I needed you to choose me freely." "I choose you," Lily said without hesitation. "I choose this, choose us." They stayed up long into the night, talking softly by the fire, sharing stories about their pasts and dreams for their futures. Wade told her about growing up in Texas, about his sister Emily, and how she had been nearly forced into a terrible marriage by their desperate parents before a neighboring rancher had intervened and eventually married her himself. He told her about coming to Arizona with nothing but determination and hope, about the struggles of building the ranch alone, about the loneliness that had become such a constant companion he had almost stopped noticing it. Lily told him about her mother, about the happy years before the cholera epidemic, about her father's love and how Margaret's hatred had poisoned everything after he died. She told him about the fear she had felt standing on that auction block, and the moment she had seen him in the crowd, how something in his eyes had told her that maybe, just maybe, things would be all right. "I was terrified you would be like the others," she confessed. "That you would take me to your ranch and expect me to be your property in every sense." "Never," Wade said firmly. "My parents may have tried to use Emily as a bargaining chip, but I swore I would never treat another human being that way. You deserve respect and kindness and the freedom to make your own choices." "Then I choose you," Lily said again, and kissed him once more under the blanket of stars. The rest of the cattle drive passed in a blur of hard work and stolen moments. They reached Prescott without any major incidents, sold the cattle for a fair price, and began the journey back to the ranch. Jesse, perceptive beyond his years, seemed to understand that something had shifted between his employers and gave them space whenever possible. When they finally arrived back at the ranch, Charlie greeted them with a wide grin. "Successful trip?" he asked, but Lily suspected he was asking about more than just the cattle sale. "Very successful," Wade confirmed, his hand finding Lily's and squeezing gently. That night, after Jesse had gone to the bunkhouse and Charlie had retired, Wade and Lily sat on the porch together, his arm around her shoulders as she leaned against his side. The night air was cool and comfortable, a relief after the day's heat. "What happens now?" Lily asked quietly. "Now we keep building this life together," Wade said. "If that is what you want." "It is," Lily assured him. "But Wade, technically, legally, you own me. That bill of sale still exists." Wade was quiet for a moment before standing and going into the house. He returned a minute later with a folded piece of paper that Lily recognized as the document from the auction. Without a word, he walked to the fire pit near the house, struck a match, and set the paper ablaze. They watched together as it burned, the flames consuming the last legal tie that bound her to that terrible day. "You are your own person," Wade said as the ashes drifted away on the evening breeze. "You always have been, but now there is no paper trail saying otherwise. You stay here because you want to, because you choose to, not because any law says you have to." Lily felt tears stream down her face, but they were good tears, healing tears. She threw her arms around Wade's neck and held him tight, feeling his strong arms encircle her waist. "I love you," she said, the words tumbling out without planning. "I know it is fast and maybe it is foolish, but I love you, Wade Killian." "Then we are both fools," Wade said with a laugh that sounded suspiciously choked with emotion. "Because I love you too, Lily Norton. I think I have loved you since I saw you standing on that platform, trying so hard to be brave." They kissed there in the firelight, sealing their confessions with actions as well as words. The future stretched before them, uncertain in many ways but certain in the most important one. They had found each other against all odds, two lonely souls in the harsh Arizona desert, and together they would build something beautiful. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Lily's life. She and Wade made no secret of their relationship, and Charlie and Jesse were nothing but supportive. Tom returned from Texas after his mother's funeral, sad but grateful that he had been able to say goodbye, and he too offered his congratulations when he learned of the romance that had blossomed in his absence. Lily threw herself into improving the ranch with even more enthusiasm than before. She repaired the garden fence, started a small chicken coop, and began preserving food for the coming winter. Wade taught her more advanced riding and ranching skills, and she proved to be an eager and capable student. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying the comfortable silence of two people who understood each other. One evening in late October, as the heat of summer finally began to break and cooler weather moved in, Wade took Lily's hand and led her away from the house, toward a small rise that overlooked the ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, and the first stars were beginning to appear in the darkening east. "I have been thinking," Wade began, sounding unusually nervous. "About us, about the future, about what I want my life to look like." Lily's heart began to race, but she stayed quiet, letting him find his words. "I built this ranch with my own two hands, but it never felt like a home until you came here. You brought life to this place, Lily. You brought joy and laughter and purpose. And I cannot imagine going back to the way things were before." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple gold ring with a small turquoise stone set in the center. "This was my grandmother's ring. Emily sent it to me a few weeks ago in a letter, said she had a feeling I might need it soon. I think she is more perceptive than I give her credit for." He dropped to one knee in the desert dust, holding the ring up to her as the sunset blazed behind him. "Lily Norton, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my family? Will you help me turn this ranch into a home and build a life worth living?" Lily was crying again, but she was laughing too, joy overflowing from every part of her being. "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him soundly. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Wade slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her hand. They stood there on the rise, wrapped in each other's arms as the sun disappeared and the stars emerged. Two people who had found love in the most unexpected of circumstances. They were married in early November in Kingman, with Charlie, Tom, and Jesse in attendance, along with a few other ranchers that Wade had befriended over the years. It was a simple ceremony in a small church, but to Lily, it was perfect. She wore a dress that Charlie's sister had loaned her, simple white cotton with lace at the collar and sleeves, and Wade wore his best shirt and pants, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Wade kissed her with such tenderness that Lily felt her knees go weak. They held a small celebration back at the ranch, with food and music and laughter that lasted late into the night. When the guests finally left and it was just the two of them, Wade carried Lily over the threshold of their home, and she could not stop smiling. Their wedding night was everything Lily had hoped it would be, tender and passionate and right. Wade treated her like she was precious, something to be cherished and protected, and she gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back. They fell asleep tangled together, her head on his chest listening to his heartbeat, his arms secure around her. Life as Wade's wife brought new joys and new challenges. The ranch work never stopped, and there were difficult days when the weather turned bad or animals got sick or fences broke down. But through it all, they had each other. Wade proved to be not just a good husband but a true partner, valuing her opinions and treating her as an equal in all decisions about the ranch. In the spring, Lily discovered she was pregnant. She told Wade one morning over breakfast, simply and directly, and watched as shock gave way to joy on his face. He swept her up in his arms and spun her around, laughing with pure happiness before setting her down carefully as though she might break. "Are you happy?" Lily asked, suddenly nervous. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Wade said, cupping her face in his hands. "You have given me everything I never knew I wanted, Lily. A home, a partnership, and now a family. I am the luckiest man in Arizona territory." The pregnancy was not easy. The summer heat made Lily sick and exhausted, and there were days when she could barely get out of bed. But Wade was attentive and patient, taking over her usual chores without complaint and making sure she rested as much as possible. Charlie and the others also rallied around her, bringing her cool water and light meals, keeping her company when Wade had to be out working the ranch. In late September of 1883, Lily gave birth to a healthy baby boy after a long and difficult labor. Wade was there through all of it, holding her hand and whispering encouragement even when she screamed and cursed, and told him she hated him for doing this to her. When the midwife finally placed the squalling infant in her arms, all the pain melted away, replaced by overwhelming love. "He is perfect," Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face as she studied her son's tiny features. He had Wade's nose and her mouth, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably turn the same whiskey brown as his father's. "What should we name him?" Wade asked, his voice thick with emotion as he gazed at his son. "William," Lily said without hesitation, "after my father, William Norton Killian." "William," Wade repeated, testing the name. "I think it suits him. Hello, William. Welcome to the world, son." Charlie, Tom, and Jesse came by later that day to meet the new arrival, all of them grinning like fools and arguing about who would teach the boy to ride and rope. Lily watched them with amusement and deep gratitude for this makeshift family they had built together. The first years of William's life were exhausting but joyful. Lily and Wade learned to be parents together, fumbling through sleepless nights and mysterious crying fits, celebrating each milestone with the enthusiasm of people who understood how precious life could be. William grew into a happy, energetic child who loved following his father around the ranch and helping with whatever tasks he was big enough to manage. When William was 3 years old, Lily discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the summer of 1887 she gave birth to twin girls. They named them Rose and Ruth, and Wade was utterly helpless in the face of his daughter's charms. Lily often found him in the nursery just watching them sleep, a look of wonder on his face. The ranch prospered over the years. With Wade's hard work and Lily's management skills, they gradually expanded their land and herd, becoming one of the more successful ranches in the region. They hired more hands as needed, always making sure to treat them fairly and pay them well. Word spread that the Killian Ranch was a good place to work, and they never lacked for help when they needed it. Lily sometimes thought back to that terrible day on the auction block in Mineral Park, though the memories grew less painful as the years passed. She had heard through the grapevine that Margaret had drunk away the money from the sale and died a few years later, alone and unmourned. Lily felt no satisfaction in this news, only sadness for a woman who had been so consumed by bitterness that she had destroyed any chance of happiness. But mostly Lily focused on the present and the future. She watched her children grow, watched William develop Wade's quiet strength and sense of justice, watched Rose and Ruth become inseparable companions with their mother's determination and their father's kindness. She stood beside Wade through droughts and harsh winters, through cattle diseases and equipment failures, through all the challenges that came with ranch life. In 1890, when William was 7 and the twins were 3, Wade surprised Lily by announcing he wanted to expand the house. "We need more room for the children," he explained, "and I think we should have a proper parlor for when we have guests." "We can afford that?" Lily asked, always practical about their finances. "We can," Wade confirmed. "The ranch has done well and I have been saving. I want to give you and the children something better, something that will last for generations." Over the next year, they added 4 more rooms to the house, including a spacious parlor, 2 additional bedrooms, and a proper indoor bathing room with hot water piped in from a system Wade designed himself. It was a luxury almost unheard of in rural Arizona, and Lily cried when she saw it completed. "You have given me so much," she told Wade as they stood in their expanded home. "You saved me from the worst day of my life and gave me the best life I could have imagined." "We saved each other," Wade corrected gently. "I was just going through the motions before you came, Lily. Working and surviving, but not really living. You taught me what it means to have a life full of love and purpose." In 1893, Lily gave birth to their 4th child, another son they named Matthew. He was a calm, thoughtful baby who seemed to observe everything with solemn, dark eyes, so different from William's energetic exuberance and the twins' constant chatter. Wade joked that they now had a child for each direction of the compass, enough to help run the ranch for years to come. As the new century approached, the Arizona territory began to change rapidly. More people moved in, towns grew larger, and the wild frontier of Wade and Lily's youth started to give way to something more settled and civilized. The railroad reached Kingman, making it easier to transport cattle and goods. Electricity came to some of the larger towns, though the ranch still relied on lanterns and the stars for light. Through all the changes, the Killian Ranch remained a constant. They adapted as needed but never lost sight of the values that had built their success: hard work, honesty, treating people fairly, and taking care of the land that sustained them. Wade taught these principles to his children, and Lily reinforced them through her own actions and words. On their 15th wedding anniversary in November 1898, Wade took Lily back to the rise where he had proposed all those years ago. The children were with Charlie and his wife Sarah, a kind woman he had married a few years earlier, giving Wade and Lily a rare evening alone. "I know it has not always been easy," Wade said as they watched another Arizona sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "The work is hard, and there have been times when we struggled, but I would not change a single moment of it. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Lily Killian." "Even better than that perfectly broke gelding you bought last spring," Lily teased, making Wade laugh. "Even better than that," he confirmed, pulling her close. "That horse will be dead in 20 years, but you and me, what we have built together, that will last long after we are gone. Our children will remember, and their children will remember, and the love that started on a terrible day in Mineral Park will echo down through the generations." Lily tilted her face up to kiss him, this man who had become her entire world. "I love you, Wade Killian. Thank you for seeing me, for wanting me, for choosing me. Always," Wade promised. "From that first moment until my last breath, I will always choose you." They stood there as the sky darkened and the stars emerged, two people who had found each other against impossible odds and built a life of love and meaning. Behind them, their ranch sprawled across the Arizona landscape, a testament to their hard work and dedication. Ahead of them, the future beckoned with promise and possibility. The years continued to pass in the pleasant rhythm of family life. William grew into a young man who shared his father's love of ranching and his mother's head for business. At 16, he was already taking on significant responsibilities around the ranch, and Wade and Lily both knew that one day he would inherit the operation they had built. Rose and Ruth, 12 years old in 1899, were inseparable twins who had developed distinct personalities despite their identical appearances. Rose loved working with the horses and could gentle even the most stubborn Mustang, while Ruth preferred helping her mother with the household tasks and had a talent for cooking that rivaled even Charlie's best efforts. Both girls were bright and capable, and Lily made sure they received as much education as possible, hiring a tutor to come to the ranch twice a week to teach them reading, writing, mathematics, and history. Matthew, at 6 years old, remained the quiet observer of the family. He loved nothing more than sitting with a book or watching the clouds drift across the endless Arizona sky. Wade sometimes worried that the boy was not tough enough for ranch life, but Lily reminded him that strength came in many forms, and Matthew's gentle nature was a blessing, not a weakness. In 1900, as the new century dawned, Wade and Lily hosted a large celebration at the ranch. They invited all their friends and neighbors, along with Charlie and Sarah, Tom and his wife Elizabeth, Jesse and his new bride, and several other ranch hands who had worked for them over the years. Even Emily and her husband made the long trip from Texas with their 4 children, giving Lily a chance to finally meet the sister-in-law she had heard so much about. Emily was warm and kind, with Wade's same eyes and a quick laugh that filled the house with joy. She pulled Lily aside during the celebration and hugged her tightly. "Thank you for making my brother so happy," she said. "I worried about him for years, out here all alone, but he wrote me about you from the very beginning, and I could tell even in his letters that you were special." "He saved my life," Lily said simply. "In every way a person can be saved." "And you saved his," Emily replied. "That is what love does. It saves us from ourselves and shows us what life can be when we open our hearts." The party lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. Lily watched her children playing with their cousins, watched Wade laughing with his sister and friends, and felt her heart swell with contentment. This was what she had been meant for, not standing on an auction block in terror, but standing here in the home she had built with the man she loved, surrounded by family and friends and the evidence of a life well lived. As the years progressed into the new century, the Killian family continued to thrive. In 1903, William married a young woman named Hannah from Kingman, a rancher's daughter who proved to be as capable and hardworking as William himself. They built a house on the far side of the Killian property, close enough to be part of the family operation but far enough to have their own space. In 1904, they made Wade and Lily grandparents with the birth of their son, Charles Wade Killian. Holding her grandson for the first time, Lily marveled at the journey her life had taken. From that terrified girl on the auction block to this, a grandmother with a loving husband, successful ranch, and growing family. She thought about her father and how proud he would have been, thought about her mother and how much she wished she could have known these children and grandchildren. Rose married in 1906 to a young veterinarian who had moved to the area, a kind man who appreciated her skill with animals and supported her desire to continue working with the ranch horses, even after marriage. Ruth chose a different path, moving to Phoenix to attend normal school and become a teacher, though she visited the ranch often and never lost her connection to the family. Matthew, growing into a thoughtful young man, discovered a talent for writing and began documenting the history of the Arizona Territory and the ranching life. He interviewed old-timers and recorded their stories, preserving a way of life that was rapidly changing. Wade and Lily supported his passion, recognizing that not every child needed to be a rancher, and that Matthew's work was valuable in its own way. In 1910, Wade and Lily celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with another large gathering at the ranch. They were both in their 50s now, with strands of gray in their hair and lines etched on their faces by years of sun and wind and laughter. But the love between them remained as strong as ever, perhaps even stronger for having weathered the storms of life together. "Do you ever think about that day?" Wade asked her one evening as they sat on the porch, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. "The day I bought your freedom, sometimes," Lily admitted, "but not with fear anymore. It was the worst day of my life and the best day of my life, all wrapped together. It brought me to you, and that makes even the terrible parts bearable." "I think about it too," Wade confessed. "I think about what would have happened if I had arrived in town an hour later, or if I had not had enough money, or if you had been too afraid to trust me. So many things could have gone wrong." "But they did not," Lily said, taking his hand. "That is the miracle of it, Wade. Out of all the terrible possibilities, we found each other, and we built something beautiful." As they aged, Wade and Lily gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, allowing William and his family to take over more of the responsibilities. They remained involved and consulted on major decisions, but they also allowed themselves time to simply enjoy the life they had built. They traveled to Texas to visit Emily, took trips to San Francisco to see the ocean, and spent lazy afternoons sitting on their porch watching the world go by. In 1918, when the Great War ended, Matthew returned from France where he had served as a correspondent, documenting the experiences of soldiers from Arizona and the Southwest. He was changed by what he had seen, quieter and more introspective, but he threw himself back into his writing with renewed purpose. He married a fellow writer he had met in New York, and they settled in Prescott, close enough to visit but far enough to pursue their literary ambitions. By 1920, Wade and Lily had 7 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, with more on the way. The ranch had expanded far beyond what Wade had first built, covering thousands of acres and employing dozens of workers. The original house, though expanded several times, remained at the heart of it all, a monument to perseverance and love. On a warm evening in May 1923, Wade and Lily sat on their familiar porch, now aged into their 60s, watching the sun set over the land they loved. Wade's hair was entirely gray now, and his movements were slower than they once had been. But his eyes still held that same warmth that had captured Lily's heart all those years ago. Lily herself had aged gracefully, her face lined with laugh lines and her hands marked by decades of work, but still strong and capable. "You have any regrets?" Wade asked her, a question they had never quite asked each other before. Lily thought carefully before answering. "I regret that my father did not live to see what became of me, that he died thinking I would end up in Margaret's clutches. I regret that the world can be so cruel that what happened to me on that auction block was legal and considered acceptable. But do I regret the life we built together? Never. Not for a single moment." Wade squeezed her hand gently. "I spent years before you came thinking I was content with my life. I had the ranch, I had work that I enjoyed, I had friends. But I did not know what I was missing until I saw you standing there, trying so hard to be brave. You showed me what life could be, Lily. You showed me that a house becomes a home when there is love in it, that work has more meaning when you do it for someone else, that the best parts of life are the quiet moments shared with the person who knows you better than anyone else in the world." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. From inside the house, they could hear Hannah preparing dinner, could hear the laughter of grandchildren playing before bed. The windmill turned lazily in the evening breeze and cattle lowed in the distance. "I would do it all again," Lily said softly. "Every moment, every hardship, every challenge. If I knew it would lead me here, to you, to this life we built together, I would stand on that auction block 1,000 times." "You will never have to stand there again," Wade promised, just as he had so many times over the years. "You are home, Lily. You are loved, you are wanted, and you are exactly where you belong." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Wade and Lily remained on the porch, hands clasped together, watching the land they had tamed and the family they had raised. Their love story had begun in desperation and fear, in one of the cruelest institutions the frontier had to offer. But from that terrible beginning, they had built something beautiful and lasting, proof that love could triumph over even the darkest circumstances. The cowboy had made her feel wanted at last, and in return, she had given him a home, a family, and a love that would endure long after they were both gone. Their children would tell their children, and those children would tell theirs, about the day in 1882, when a young woman stood on an auction block in Mineral Park, Arizona. And a cowboy with a good heart changed both their lives forever. Years continued to pass peacefully at the Killian Ranch. Wade and Lily lived to see their great-great-grandchildren, surrounded always by the family they had created and the legacy of love they had established. When Wade passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1931 at the age of 74, Lily held his hand and whispered her love one last time. She followed him 2 years later, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who had all benefited from the life these two people had built together. They were buried side by side on the rise where Wade had proposed all those years ago, their graves overlooking the ranch that had been their life's work. The headstones were simple but meaningful, bearing their names, the years they had lived, and a single inscription that captured the essence of their relationship. Two souls who found each other in darkness and built a life in the light. The Killian Ranch continued to operate for generations, passed down through the family with the same values that Wade and Lily had established. The story of how it all began, of the auction block and the cowboy who saved a desperate girl, became family legend, told and retold around dinner tables and campfires, a reminder that love could bloom in the most unlikely places, and that kindness could change the entire course of someone's life. In the end, what had started as the worst day of Lily Norton's life became the foundation of the best life she could have imagined. The stepmother who wanted her gone had inadvertently given her the greatest gift possible, the chance to find a man who would see her worth, who would treat her as an equal partner, who would build a life and family with her based on respect and genuine affection. Wade Killian had made her feel wanted at last, and together they proved that even from the darkest beginnings, something beautiful and lasting could grow. Their love story became woven into the history of Arizona itself, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. Long after they were gone, their descendants continued to gather at the old ranch house, now preserved as a family heritage site, and tell the story of Wade and Lily, the cowboy and the girl from the auction block, who found each other in 1882 and built a legacy that would last forever.